The Arctic wind screamed across the frozen wasteland as Ethan Wells pushed through the blizzard. His breath fogged in the freezing air, and the crunch of his boots was the only sound against the endless white. He had been following strange energy readings for weeks, readings that did not match any known natural source. Governments ignored them, satellites dismissed them, but Ethan had seen enough anomalies in his years of exploration to trust his instincts. Something was buried here, something old, something waiting. At last, his scanner flickered with stronger signals. Beneath the snow, beneath centuries of layered ice, a metallic pulse hummed faintly. He dropped to his knees, brushing frost away until his gloved hand struck something solid. The surface was smooth, not stone, not ice, but a metal unlike any he had ever touched. And it was warm. His heart quickened as he pulled out his tools, cutting through the frozen crust until a circular outline appeared. With a grinding groan, a hidden door shifted, releasing a breath of stale, ancient air. Ethan lowered himself into the darkness, his flashlight beam catching on walls of seamless silver metal. Symbols ran across them like rivers of light, glowing faintly in pale blue. It was a bunker, an underground vault that time itself had forgotten. His footsteps echoed, and the silence pressed in, heavy and watchful, as if the place itself was alive. At the center of the chamber, encased in frost and glass, rested a pod. Inside, her figure lay still. A girl, or rather, something more. Her skin shimmered faintly with faint silver markings that seemed to move like constellations. Her hair was white as snow, spread around her face like strands of light. She looked fragile, yet untouched by time, as though she had been sleeping for centuries. Ethan froze, staring. His breath caught. He pressed his palm against the glass. The markings across her body glowed in response, pulsing slowly, as though recognizing his touch. His heart raced. She was alive. For hours, he studied the pod, tracing the alien mechanisms, reading what little he could from the symbols. He should have contacted someone, reported the discovery. But something inside him whispered no. This was not a treasure to hand over to governments or corporations. This was something personal, something fragile. She was not just a find. She was someone. Ethan's fingers brushed a panel, and with a sudden hiss, the pod released a burst of cold mist. The glass slid open. His instincts screamed to step back, but his feet stayed rooted. Slowly, her chest rose with a trembling breath. Her eyes opened, silver, glowing faintly in the darkness. She looked at him with confusion, with fear, with recognition that made his chest tighten. Her lips parted, her voice weak, trembling with an alien accent. "Where am I?" Ethan swallowed hard. "You are safe. You have been asleep for a very long time." She sat up slowly, every movement delicate, as if the weight of the world pressed down on her. The markings across her skin glowed brighter, responding to her awakening. She looked around the chamber with sorrow, as if remembering a life long gone. Then her gaze returned to Ethan. "My name is Liara," she whispered, "and you should not have woken me." Ethan felt a chill run through him. "Why?" Her silver eyes darkened, the glow fading to a stormy gray. She reached out, her fingers brushing the air as if feeling something unseen. And then the ground shuddered. From deep beneath the bunker came a distant rumble, low and terrible, like something massive shifting in its sleep. Liara's voice broke with grief. "The prison. The seal is broken. The void-born will awaken." Ethan's stomach knotted. "Prison? Seal? What are you talking about?" Her gaze locked onto his. There was no anger, only sorrow. "This pod was not only my sleep. It was the lock, the barrier. My life force was the chain. And now it is undone." Before Ethan could answer, the walls trembled again. Strange shapes rippled across the metal, shadows that seemed to move without light. The air grew colder, heavier, filled with whispers that scraped against the edges of his mind. He staggered back, gripping the side of the pod. From the corner of the chamber, a dark mist seeped through the cracks. It swirled and twisted, forming vague shapes, claws, faces that flickered and vanished. A voice echoed inside Ethan's skull, low and hungry. Free at last. Liara pushed herself from the pod, unsteady but fierce. Energy crackled from her markings, weaving into her hands as faint blades of light. She stood between Ethan and the shadows, her voice sharp with defiance. "You will not take this world." The mist hissed, retreating slightly, but it did not vanish. Ethan felt his blood run cold. He realized now that he had uncovered not a relic, not a discovery, but a war older than humanity itself. And he had broken the one chain that kept it sealed. Liara turned to him, her silver eyes fierce. "You woke me, human. Now you will help me fight, or this world will burn." Ethan's chest pounded as the shadows twisted and recoiled, yet he could not move his eyes from Liara. There was a fire in her that did not belong to someone who had just awoken from centuries of slumber. She stood like a warrior who had seen countless battles, and yet her frail form trembled under the weight of the moment. The mist thickened, and from it crawled figures that no human mind was ever meant to comprehend. They were not beasts, not spirits, not anything Ethan's imagination could have prepared him for. Their bodies were shifting shapes, half-formed, as if they were sculpted from nightmares. Long arms ending in claws, faces that stretched and melted, eyes that appeared and disappeared. They were alive and yet wrong, like living shadows tearing through reality itself. One of them shrieked, a sound so sharp that Ethan's knees buckled. His ears rang, and for a heartbeat, he saw his own death in that endless void of sound. But Liara stepped forward. Her voice rang like steel. "Back to the depths, fiends." She raised her hands, and light burst from her skin. The markings across her body blazed like constellations igniting in the night sky. With a sweep of her arms, a wave of radiant energy slammed into the shadows. The creatures shrieked and fell back, their twisted forms unraveling into smoke. Ethan pushed himself upright, his heart racing. "What are those things?" "They are the Voidborn," Liara said without looking at him. Her voice was strained, her glow dimming slightly. "Ancient devourers. When your world was still young, they came from the abyss between stars. My people sealed them beneath the ice, binding them with my life force. That is why I slept, why I could never leave. I was the lock." Ethan's throat went dry. "And by waking you, I weakened it." Liara turned at last, her gaze heavy with sorrow. "Yes." The weight of guilt crushed him, but before he could answer, the ground shook violently. Cracks split the walls, glowing with black fire. From the shadows, more Voidborn emerged, clawing toward them with unnatural hunger. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run, but Liara grabbed his wrist. Her touch burned like a surge of lightning, not painful, but filled with raw energy. "Do not fear. You carry light in you too. I can feel it. I am not like you," Ethan said, shaking his head. "I am just a man with tools and curiosity." Her silver eyes softened for the first time. "Then let your courage be your weapon. That is enough." Before he could answer, the shadows surged forward. Liara unleashed another blast of light, but this time her strength faltered. Ethan saw her stumble, her glow flickering. The energy drained from her like water spilling from a cracked vessel. Without thinking, he stepped forward. He grabbed a fallen metal rod from the floor, gripping it tight like a makeshift spear. The first Voidborn lunged, a clawed mass of darkness. Ethan drove the rod into its shifting chest. To his shock, the creature shrieked, its form unraveling where his strike landed. Not killed, but wounded. Liara's lips parted in surprise. "You can harm them. Your spirit resists the void." Ethan barely had time to register her words before another Voidborn lashed out. He ducked, swung wildly, and again the rod burned through the shadow like it was more than just metal, like his will itself carried power. Together, they fought in that frozen chamber, Liara blazing like a fallen star, Ethan striking with raw desperation. The creatures fell back, dissolving into mist, but each attack left Liara weaker. Her breath came ragged, her glow dimmer with every pulse. Finally, the last Voidborn hissed and melted into the walls, vanishing into the cracks of the bunker. Silence fell. Ethan leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, his arms trembling from the fight. Liara sank to her knees, clutching her chest. "You are weakening," Ethan said, kneeling beside her. She nodded faintly. "Because I was the seal. Every moment I remain awake, the prison unravels further. If I return to stasis, I can mend it, but—" She looked away, her voice breaking. "If I sleep again, it may be forever, and I will never open my eyes to see another soul." Ethan's heart twisted. He wanted to speak, to say anything to ease her pain, but before he could, the chamber trembled again. A fissure ripped across the floor, and from the crack rose a colossal figure, far larger than the smaller Voidborn they had faced. This one towered over them, a monstrous shape of darkness and bone, its eyes burning with endless hunger. Liara staggered to her feet. Her glow returned for one final burst, fierce but faint. It has begun. The first of the Voidborn is rising. Ethan swallowed hard, gripping his makeshift weapon tighter. Fear clawed at him, but beside Liara, something inside him refused to surrender. He stepped forward. Then we fight. The air split open with a roar that seemed to come from the bones of the earth itself. The first of the Voidborn towered above them, its form shifting between monstrous shapes. At times it had wings that stretched wider than the chamber, then claws longer than spears, then a face that dissolved into a mass of eyes. Its voice was not sound but a vibration that rattled Ethan's chest and filled his skull with endless whispers. You dare wake me, after centuries in the dark? Your world will be ash. Ethan's grip on the metal rod tightened, his knuckles white. He forced his voice not to tremble. Not while we still breathe. Liara stood at his side, her light flaring again though her body trembled. Her silver eyes locked on the beast. This is the one who led them, the one who nearly consumed the stars. If we fall here, all is lost. The Voidborn lunged, its massive claw striking down. Ethan shoved Liara aside and rolled as the blow shattered the floor, sending shards of alien metal flying. He scrambled to his feet, heart pounding. The creature turned, its burning eyes narrowing on him. Before it could strike again, Liara raised both hands and unleashed a torrent of radiant energy. A spear of pure light pierced the monster's chest, forcing it back with a guttural roar. For a moment, hope surged in Ethan's chest, until he saw Liara stumble. The glow across her skin flickered violently. She was burning herself out. The beast recovered quickly, lashing forward with a tendril of shadow. Ethan swung his rod with all his strength. Against all logic, the blow connected, searing through the tendril as though his will itself carried fire. The creature howled, and Ethan's mind rang with its fury. You are nothing, human, the Voidborn thundered. A fragile spark. I will snuff you out. Then try. Ethan shouted back, his voice raw. They fought together in desperate rhythm. Liara struck with radiant blasts, each weaker than the last, while Ethan darted forward and swung, his blows carrying a strange force that even the Voidborn could not ignore. Still, the beast pressed them hard, its strikes shaking the chamber, its voice filling the air with promises of doom. As the battle raged, the fissures in the bunker widened. From them crawled more Voidborn, smaller than the first, but enough to overwhelm them. Ethan's chest seized with dread. They could not survive this alone. Then, a new sound echoed through the chamber, a high, vibrating hum, like crystal being struck. From the shadows above, shapes descended. Ethan shielded his eyes as glowing wings unfolded. 3 alien figures landed with a surge of light, their forms tall and luminous, their skin etched with markings like Liara's. They carried weapons of radiant crystal, humming with power. One of them looked at Liara with wide eyes. Guardian Liara, you yet live? Liara's breath caught. You endured. The alien warrior nodded. Fragments of our kind remained. Hidden. Waiting. The seal called to us when it faltered. Without another word, the 3 joined the battle. Their crystal blades carved through the lesser Voidborn with precision. The chamber lit up in flashes of radiant energy as shadow and light collided. Ethan fought alongside them, each swing of his makeshift weapon striking harder, as though their presence amplified his strange power. The first of the Voidborn bellowed, its voice shaking the walls. You cannot bind me again. This world will be my feast. Liara stood tall despite her failing strength. Then we will starve you. She surged forward with the last of her strength, light pouring from her markings like a dying star flaring one final time. The alien warriors followed, Ethan at her side. Together, they struck at the monstrous heart of the Voidborn. The chamber shook with every blow. Shadows screamed. Light roared. And for the first time, Ethan felt that they might truly stand a chance. But then, the beast's claws swept across the room. One alien warrior was struck and hurled into the wall, his body shattering in a burst of fading light. Another fell moments later, consumed by shadows. Only one remained, fighting desperately. Ethan and Liara pressed on, but he could see her collapsing. The glow in her eyes dimmed, her breath shallow. She could not hold out much longer. "Ethan," she whispered, even as she struck the beast with another flare of light. "When this ends, you must let me return to the pod. I alone can seal them again." "No," Ethan snapped, swinging his rod with fury. "Not alone. You will not face eternity in silence again. I will not let it happen." Her eyes widened, grief and hope colliding within them. "You do not understand. The seal consumes life itself. To share it means death. Then we share it," Ethan said through clenched teeth. Together. Before she could protest, the first Voidborn reared back, gathering a storm of shadows so vast it swallowed the chamber in darkness. Its voice was a thunderclap. "All of you will be mine." Ethan tightened his grip. Liara lifted her hands. Side by side, they charged. The storm of shadows poured over them like a tidal wave, blotting out every trace of light. Ethan's body shook as the cold pierced into his bones, a cold not of ice, but of emptiness, a hunger that wanted to swallow his very soul. The whispers clawed at his mind, promising rest, power, or despair if he only surrendered. For a moment, he felt himself slipping. Then Liara's hand gripped his. Her touch was fire against the void, pulling him back. Her silver eyes glowed faintly in the darkness. "Do not let it in. Hold to me." Ethan forced air into his lungs. His fear gave way to something fiercer. He would not abandon her. He would not abandon this world. Together, they pushed forward, breaking through the storm until they stood before the towering monster. The first Voidborn loomed like a mountain of claws and eyes, its maw splitting open to reveal a darkness deeper than space itself. Liara's voice rang out, fierce despite her weakness. "You will never escape. Not while I still stand." The beast laughed, a sound that cracked the walls. "You are broken, Guardian. Your light is fading. You cannot hold me again." Liara's knees buckled, but Ethan caught her, pulling her upright. He stared into the abyss of the creature's eyes and shouted, "Then I will." Energy surged through him, raw and wild. His veins burned, his chest ached, but he did not let go. Liara gasped as the markings across her skin blazed brighter, then spread faintly across his own arms, glowing in the same constellation patterns. Their lights merged, intertwining. The Voidborn recoiled, its voice rising in fury. "No. Impossible. A human cannot bear the seal." But Ethan could feel it, the connection, the bond forged in this desperate fight. Liara's strength flowed into him, and his stubborn will anchored her fading soul. For the first time, she was not alone in carrying the burden. The remaining alien warrior, battered but standing, cried out in awe. "He shares the Guardian's light, a bond unseen since the first war." Ethan ignored the words. There was no time to think. The beast lunged, jaws gaping to swallow them whole. Liara raised her hands, and Ethan raised his rod. Together, their light erupted in a blinding storm, a lance of energy so bright it split the darkness. The strike pierced the Voidborn's chest, and the monster roared in agony. Shadows unraveled, whipping across the chamber like torn banners. But still it clawed forward, refusing to fall. Liara's voice cracked. "It is not enough. The seal must be remade now, or the prison will collapse." Ethan met her eyes, the weight of her sorrow clear. He nodded once. "Then we finish this together." She shook her head weakly. "If you give yourself to the seal, you will not return. And if I do nothing, you will be trapped alone for eternity," he answered. His voice was steady, firm. "No more loneliness. Not for you. Not anymore." Her eyes shimmered with tears that glowed like silver fire. She wanted to argue, but there was no time. The Voidborn's form writhed, splitting cracks through the chamber as it tried to pull itself free. Ethan wrapped his arms around Liara, pressing his forehead to hers. "Show me how. I will carry it with you." She closed her eyes, trembling. Then she whispered, "Together." The markings across their bodies blazed, merging into a single pattern. A circle of light formed beneath them, ancient and vast, etched into the very walls of the bunker. The chamber itself seemed to awaken, responding to their bond. The Voidborn screamed, thrashing as the seal's power pulled against it. Shadows tore from its body, dragged into the glowing circle. It clawed the floor, shrieked with voices of 1,000 nightmares, but it could not resist. Ethan's body burned, his strength drained, his vision blurred, but he held on, clinging to Liara's hand with everything he had. She was his anchor, and he was hers. Their souls locked together, two flames refusing to die out. The seal closed like a door of blinding radiance. With a final, terrible cry, the first Void-born was torn back into the abyss, its form dissolving into the void beyond the cracks. The lesser creatures screamed and vanished with it. The storm ended. Silence fell. The light dimmed slowly, and Ethan collapsed to his knees, still clutching Liara's hand. The markings across his arms faded, leaving faint scars like constellations burned into his skin. He gasped for air, his chest aching as if he had given away half his life. Liara knelt beside him, her own glow soft but steady. For the first time, she was not fading. She was alive. The seal pulsed faintly beneath them, stronger than before, bound not by one soul alone, but by two. She looked at him with wide, trembling eyes. "You should be dead." Ethan gave a weak smile, his voice hoarse. "I told you. We share the burden." Her hand rose, brushing his cheek with a gentleness that broke his heart. Then for the first time in countless centuries, "I am not alone." The remaining alien warrior approached, bowing his head. "The prison holds again. The Voidborn are sealed. But you have done what none believed possible. Two bound as one, guardian and mortal. This world is safe, for now." Ethan leaned against Liara, exhaustion pulling at him, but warmth filled his chest. For the first time since he had stepped onto the frozen wasteland, he felt hope. Not just for Earth, but for her, for them. She smiled faintly, her silver eyes soft. "Then let us guard it together." Days passed. The storm outside the bunker had calmed, leaving the Arctic silent once more. But inside, everything had changed. Ethan sat near the faintly glowing seal, his body still aching from the price he had paid. The scars on his arms glimmered softly, a reminder that a part of the Void-born would always rest inside him. He had given away a piece of his life, but he did not regret it. Not for a moment. Liara moved quietly through the chamber, her steps graceful, her silver eyes no longer filled with sorrow, but with something lighter, brighter. She had been reborn, no longer a lonely sentinel chained to eternity, but a guardian with a companion beside her. The last surviving alien warrior approached them, his body still marked from the battle. "The others who remain of my kind will gather," he said. "The world must not know what sleeps beneath its ice, but we will stand ready. And so will you." Ethan nodded slowly. "I am not a soldier, but I will not walk away now." Liara touched his hand, her glow brushing against his scars. "You are more than a soldier. You are proof that even in the coldest darkness, a spark of light can change everything." The warrior bowed and departed into the blizzard above, leaving the two of them alone again. For a moment, the chamber felt strangely peaceful, as though the weight of centuries had finally lifted. Ethan leaned back against the pod that once imprisoned her. "So what happens now? Do you stay here forever?" Liara sat beside him, her hair glowing faintly in the soft light. "The seal is stable. As long as we remain bound, it will hold. But I no longer need to sleep inside the pod. I am free." Ethan exhaled, relief softening his shoulders. He glanced at her, and for the first time allowed himself to smile. "Then we make a life. Here, or wherever we can. Not as prisoner and guard, but as partners." She tilted her head, studying him with quiet wonder. "In all my centuries, I never imagined anyone would say those words to me." Her voice lowered, almost a whisper. "And I never thought I would believe them." Their hands found each other, fingers intertwining. For once, there was no trembling fear of what waited in the shadows. There was only warmth. Far below them, the Void-born whispered in fury, their prison stronger than ever. But for now, they were silent. And above, the endless Arctic sky stretched wide, painted with stars that seemed to shine brighter than before. Liara leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder, her voice soft. "Together, we will guard this world. And together, we will live." Ethan looked at the stars above the ice, his heart steady. For the first time in his life, he felt that he had not just found a discovery, but a purpose. And in the stillness of the Arctic night, two souls who were never meant to meet sat side by side, no longer bound by loneliness, but by a bond that even eternity could not break.